Hello and welcome to day 2 of UFAW's Recent Advances in Animal Welfare Science Conference. Welcoming you from wherever you are in the world, I'm Mia Cobb from the Animal Welfare Science Centre at the University of Melbourne in Australia. I'm very pleased to be here and thanks to UFAW for inviting me to chair this session today. We have got such an array of projects and species coming up. I'm really excited to share with you. We'll be hearing about dolphins and ticks and cows and sheep and red pandas, not to mention poultry and pigs and dogs. So get ready. We are going to go through a little bit of housekeeping first. The first thing, if you're on Twitter and you'd like to join in the conversation, the event hashtag is UFAW 2021. That's UFAW 2021. There's been very active conversation in day 1. And some people doing a great job summarising talks for other people to follow along. But please join in. You can, I guess, share questions and comments in there with each other as we go along through all the presentations. I know that there's over 1,300 or close to 1,300 participants tuning in from all around the world, which is incredibly exciting. And we're very thankful to you for being able to make this event available to everyone free of charge. It's wonderful for our science to be shared so widely. If you are able to support UFAW, they are completely reliant on donations and memberships. It's very easy to donate or join. Just go to the website, ufaw.org.uk. It takes 4 minutes to join up. I did it myself last week. It's very straightforward. And you can make a donation no matter how small or big to show your gratitude for them making this event available online last year and this year. Our presentations are pre-recorded just to limit any glitches that might happen in the technology, but all of our speakers will be available live following their presentations for questions. If you've got questions, just pop them into the question box through the webinar panel on your right, and we'll get to them if we have time. The speakers, we're going to be doing one session where there's short presentations back to back, and in that session we'll have 6 speakers all speaking, and then we'll get them together for a panel question session afterwards. There are handouts also available through the webinar tab to your right, and some of those are quite interactive for the short talks, so make sure you check them out. If you have any times where you feel like you're seeing a part of a PowerPoint you shouldn't be, or there's a pause in the transition between speakers and you're watching on a web browser, I suggest you refresh your screen. That tends to take care of most of the problems. If you're experiencing any audio issues, go to the audio tab on the webinar system and try changing your source. That seems to solve most of the audio issues. Beyond that, we're going to be moderating the questions, and if you can include the speaker name, that would be really helpful so we can keep track of which questions are intended for which speakers. And there's also a fantastic poster session. I got in there today because it's evening in Australia here right now, and was able to look through. There's a really great way if you're just particularly interested in a particular species. Today I made sure I checked out all the dog ones, so I got into the abstract booklet, searched for dog, and was able to jump through and comment on all the dog posters. So you can go in, you can have a look at the posters, you can leave comments, you can vote for your favourite. And you could be in the winning or in the running to win a voucher for some Wiley UFAW books, which would be great. Okay, I think, let me just check how we're going for time. We've got a few more minutes and then we'll be hearing from Isabella Clegg to start this session. And one of the things that I was also going to mention is with the speakers being live, it means that you'll be able to interact directly, I guess. I'll also be checking Twitter for any questions that might come through, but the easiest place to put those is in the question panel on the right-hand side. I'd like to take this opportunity to also give a big shout out of thanks and appreciation to UFAW, particularly Hugh Gollidge and Stephen Wickens for all the work that they are doing behind the scenes. They are working so hard to make this event come to us all everywhere around the globe right now. And yeah, if you can just take a moment to virtually give them a big clap all around, I think that would be great. We've got a couple more minutes, so if you need to take a final bathroom break or grab yourself a tea or a coffee or a wine, depending on the time zone that you're in, please do that now, and we'll be back in about 3 minutes to start the first session. I'll see you then. All right, hopefully you've been able to get yourself a drink of some kind and you're all set, maybe some snacks as well. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome our first speaker to day 2 of the UFAW conference. We're going to be hearing from Isabella Clegg now, and she's going to be telling us about dolphins' willingness to participate in positive reinforcement training and how that predicts early changes in health status. I just want to remind you one more time, you can leave questions in the question box, and Isabella will be joining us live after this presentation to be able to answer your questions. I'll see you then.
Hi everyone, thanks so much for coming to my talk. Thank you so much to UFAW for organising. And I'm going to talk about dolphins' willingness to participate during positive reinforcement training and how that predicts early changes in their health status. And I'd like to credit all of my co-authors down there. So I'm first just going to go over some quick background to the study, including some information on dolphins in zoos and aquaria. Then about the study itself, the questions, methods and results. And the discussion, I'd like to focus on sort of the power of this massive data set we collected, how it can be integrated into daily welfare measures for dolphins. So, I guess to understand progress in zoo animal welfare, we've got to look to what's happened with farm animals. And as we know, it's progressed from farm to lab, companion, and the zoo. The aim is to measure this holistic concept of welfare. The latest progress that we've seen is that we now look at positive as well as negative affective states, and that the most accurate way to measure welfare is always to combine as many multidisciplinary measures as possible. Always questions about definitions, but most studies these days tend to use feelings-based definitions, where the one that I use is that welfare is the balance between positive and negative affective states. So in terms of measuring those affective states, so emotions are obviously shorter term kind of feelings that make up affective states, and they have these behavioural, physiological and cognitive components. And I really like the triangulation principle from Webster, where he explains why it's best to use these multidisciplinary measures. So if you have the 3 dimensions there and the actual welfare of the animal in the middle, you can say that as we add another dimension or another type of measure, we might get slightly closer. That red dot is our estimated welfare. We might get slightly closer to the actual welfare. As we add another, we might triangulate, get a little bit closer. We'll probably never actually arrive at that actual welfare state because it's still subjective. We're not in the minds of the animal, but the more multidisciplinary information we can add, the better. And health is always an interesting one of where that comes into it. Poor health doesn't always lead to poor welfare, but it is generally a good indicator. Some of those parameters are included in the physiological, of course, so it can be tested alongside those kind of indicators as a kind of indirect way to measure welfare, but always correlated with other measures too. So qualitative animal-based measures. I want to talk about first the difference between qualitative and quantitative. Most existing welfare indicators are quantitative. They're obviously easier to measure and replicate, but welfare is this holistic, all-encompassing, comprehensive concept. And these qualitative measures actually help capture these contextual elements that you might miss with quantitative. So a common qualitative technique is these QBAs, which measure animals' emotional expressivity. They've been shown to correlate to quantitative measures, and the data collection is feasible and inexpensive. How animal caretakers might link into that, and the zoo especially. So zookeepers often don't have a lot of time during the day to conduct full observations or do research projects. So this is a really feasible measure that they can incorporate. They probably have a better chance than researchers of capturing those subtle emotional details. Of course, they can always be biased, and that's a disadvantage, but on the whole, they know their animals the best. And in past studies, it has yielded valid and reliable welfare data. So dolphins in zoos and aquaria, you've got about 5,000 worldwide of bottlenose dolphins, 250 in Europe. Lots of captive breeding, which is maintaining populations in developed countries, not globally. They're part of, but often apart from modern zoos. So the main reasons for this, I think, is that they participate in presentations, shows, interactions, which other zoo animals don't tend to. They've got these advanced training programs through operant conditioning, which is positive reinforcement techniques in most facilities. And they often have separate welfare regulations with pretty low public support. So what do we know about dolphin welfare in terms of research? There really wasn't much at all before 2015, but luckily we've seen an exponential increase since then. We've done cognitive bias tests, lots of cortisol studies, looking at vocal parameters of welfare. There's now a comprehensive assessment, which is based on the welfare quality assessment for farm animals, but there's definitely still gaps, especially in multidisciplinary correlations of measures in big sample sizes, and also very little qualitative measures that have been tested. So our research question development was, we wanted to conduct this large-scale dolphin welfare study. We really wanted multidisciplinary, obviously valid or potentially valid measures of health and behaviour at least. We wanted to take data regularly, because this is the key to welfare assessment. We wanted it to be long-term, multi-facility, as I said, big data set over a long period of time. And this kind of meant that the dolphin caretakers would have to take the data themselves. We couldn't be everywhere at once, us who were managing the project. And so for that, it needed to be a feasible methodology. So looking at quantitative and qualitative behavioural assessment type methods. So We developed these 4 potential welfare indicators from the literature, as well as what was feasible within the daily routine. So we had 3 qualitative measures: willingness to participate during training sessions, basically a motivation score, a qualitative health status, qualitative social behaviour score, which was measured by rate marks. I'll go through these in a minute. And the quantitative measure of percentage of food eaten out of what was offered to the dolphins. We took this data, most of it multiple times a day. The health status was taken weekly, and this was a long-term study, multi-facility, 4 different facilities, 5 groups, 51 dolphins, and the data was taken for a year, which was great. And so our first question was basically, do all those measures, parameters correlate together? And our second question was, are any of those parameters able to be early predictors of changes in health, specifically departures from good health? So just to explain the measures a little bit more, this was the willingness to participate, a 5-point scale. As I said, motivation during all types of training session. The staff took that measure, and before the study, we went round to each facility with video references to help the staff understand how to score each measure and to increase reliability between trainers. Health status was scored by the vet every week, as I said, and the focus was definitely on health issues that impacted welfare, i.e. that had observable symptoms. So, for example, a chronic asymptomatic tumour wouldn't have scored poor on health. It was only if we saw signs of sickness or poor health. The rate mark score. So rate marks are the marks that dolphins leave on each other's bodies when they, mostly when they're aggressive, but sometimes when they play. So it's quite a good measure of social disturbances if there's a lot of new ones on the body. So we looked at new rate marks only. That's the difference between them there. And this was what it would look like. We have basically no new rate marks or very tiny ones, small amount of new rate marks and a large amount of new rate marks. And that's quite unusual for a dolphin to have that 2 score of new rate marks. And the percentage of food eaten was a simple one. The kilograms of food offered and the kilograms, how much was eaten out of it. And positive reinforcement training means that the dolphins always received their full daily ration that they were scheduled to get, which was constant, unless it changed with season and water temperature. But there was no withholding of food for poor behaviour. They always got that food. So the results, we had almost 100,000 data points for these willingness to participate score, which was awesome. Put that into weekly values. So for analysis 1 of whether the scores correlated together, we used GLM models and looked at the associations from the willingness to participate score as a dependent variable to the 3 others. Analysis 2, our methods there, or our statistics there, were looking at whether it predicted health changes. So for that, we defined a departure from good health. That was when the health score decreased from a 0 to a 1 or a 0 to a 2, and no such case preceded it for 3 months. And so we came out with 26 departure from good health events from 26 different dolphins in all 4 facilities. So that was pretty good in terms of a spread of animals. And again, we used GLM models for binomial data to analyse that. And this is what we found. So just to orientate you along the bottom, you've got the willingness to participate score. 0 is very unmotivated, or not there basically. 4 is the highly motivated score. So willingness to participate was significantly higher when the health score was better, what you might imagine. It was also higher when a higher percentage of food was eaten. Again, what you might imagine, as I said, the only time when they wouldn't have eaten the full percentage of food is if they refused it themselves. And willingness to participate was also higher when no new rate marks were observed. So that was an interesting link between the social setting or disturbances that were going on and their motivation during training. Again, not wholly unexpected, but interesting to see the correlations. And while some of the other parameters like health did correlate to percentage of food eaten. None of them correlated to all of them like the willingness to participate did. So for analysis 2, this is the really interesting bit, I think. Again, you've got the unmotivated to very motivated up there, and you've got here the departures of good health. There's one slightly hidden by my screen, but it's directly below that. And interestingly, the willingness to participate significantly decreased 3 days before the vet's diagnosis. However, the percentage of food eaten didn't decrease, which is what we did expect that to decrease, or at least be more sensitive, because inappetence is a real solid indicator, you'd think, of an upcoming poor health episode. But actually, it was this motivation score that slightly decreased significantly before the health issue. So what does this all mean? It was definitely a feasible scoring system that we could apply daily, and it was the only indicator to correlate to all the others, so we think it's definitely a potential overall welfare indicator. We also think it's a good predictor, an early predictor of health issues, potentially better than the percentage of food eaten. Could be a key way to look at those pre-pathological states, that state before the animal gets ill, which is usually really, really hard to identify. So it could be valuable, obviously, for that, to enable early treatment. There were definitely limitations with our study. Rate marks can be attributed to play as well. As I said, there was some sources of non-independence, so the vet's health diagnosis could have been influenced by the trainers talking about maybe low motivation scores. However, we argue that this could only increase the likelihood of the diagnosis, not a false positive. They wouldn't have changed their diagnosis depending on that. So welfare implications of our study. I think it's a really great indicator of daily dolphin welfare, but we definitely need further research into the causes of it. Software like the ones on the right should definitely be used to measure it, because even a 0.2 decrease or increase was significant in terms of our study and the health issues. So needs to be tracked daily, and an average is calculated. And there was another study by Delfour et al. Looking at the behaviours which make up willingness to participate, and that validated it further, which was great. I think it also shows the power of multi-facility research. This large data set was definitely critical to our results because of all those potential variables and inter-observer variability that was hopefully, or we think, ironed out by the 100,000 data points, basically. And wider applications, especially, for example, inappetence, that's usually used as a gold standard basically for poor welfare or health, maybe decreases in motivation either for rewards or during training sessions are a better, or at least a supplemental welfare indicator that should be used. So just to summarise, dolphin welfare studies are definitely increasing, especially the use of qualitative methods, which haven't been used that much. Willingness to participate, I think, is a really important parameter that we found from our study. It can potentially be an early predictor of health issues, but we definitely need further studies to look at the reasons why that might be, and potentially in other species. Thank you so much again for organising, and here are my contact details, and the paper is open access if anyone would like. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Isabella. I'll just give Izzy a moment to join me. If you can just turn on your camera and audio.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you. That's such an interesting presentation, and it's really good to know that conducting those daily qualitative welfare measures can act as a really helpful tool to tracking and improving welfare. We've got some questions coming through. The first one that I'll ask you is actually, have any facilities continued to use the scales, and have they offered any further insights into the link with dolphin welfare?
Yeah, they have. I think as far as I know, about 3 of the 4 facilities are still using it, and I heard one of them emailed me the other day to say that it's a case study level thing, but they have a dolphin that has a recurring chronic fungal fungal issue with its lungs, and they use this daily score of its willingness to participate, and as soon as they see it drop slightly, they then go ahead and take a blood test and look at the parameters, and they find, similar to what we found, that it's that this drop in her willingness to participate is an indicator of whenever she has like another episode of that illness. So yeah, I think I'm hoping it is really useful practically.
I've got there's lots more questions coming through, but we've got one from Frank who asks for willingness to participate to be accepted as a good indicator of dolphin welfare. It ought to have high sensitivity and specificity. Have you got any plans to investigate this further in the future?
Yeah, I think the specificity question was addressed better by the Delfour et al. Paper. They looked into what components make up the willingness to participate qualitative, concept, I guess. And they found, I think it was 6 different parameters, but I might misquote them, that were all, they measured them behaviorally and then got the trainers also to measure this willingness to participate, and found that this was, that those types of behaviors made it up. But I think that's a great question, and it definitely should be further investigated.
And there's a question from Becky Hunt who says, thank you, really interesting presentation. Just wondered whether for some scores you asked multiple trainers to assess the same animal at the same time to be able to look at inter-rater reliability of the scores? Yeah,
so we didn't do that. We planned to do it, and the problem was that there ended up being these 4 facilities in 3 different countries, and each of them had about, I don't know, 20 or 30 trainers on the books, and I was living in one country, and it's not an excuse, but anyway, it was feasibly very hard to get everyone to do an inter-observer reliability test. I think that would have been a good thing to do in the future. And as I said, I think that what we did do before is I think I said in the presentation, I went to every facility, we gave them reference videos, we discussed all the scores, we did it sort of ad hoc verbally, but we didn't do it formally, no.
That's good. It's always good to have things to look for next time, right?
Definitely.
It's always easy in hindsight as well. Elizabeth Carter has asked, have you given the facilities that you worked with feedback about the results, and if so, how was it received?
We didn't actually. I think because we were looking at all facilities together, we didn't look at like the differences between facilities. We also included facility as a random factor in the models and didn't find any difference that way in facilities. But I do think that there could be further data to look at with that, and have a look at the different motivation across sex, age. We didn't largely find a sex effect or an age effect, but that definitely, I'm sure if you looked at more detailed data, it could. I just so if anyone wants a project, I can come and find some data.
Heather Browning's asked that you found that the willingness to participate correlated well with health. Has it been validated as a measure for the more effective side of welfare? No,
not as, I don't think as closely as we found with health. So our measure of the rate marks was meant to be our one sort of look into the affective state to do with social behaviour. Again, and it's no excuse, but there was practically, for us to be able to take a reliable affective state measure during this, well, anyway, we weren't able to. But yeah, I think that's, again, something definitely interesting for the future. We found this initial, when there was more social dynamic changes in the group, i.e. more rate marks, there was this drop in the willingness to participate. So that indicates, I'm sure there's something there, but definitely, like the other question, it needs to be more specific and sensitive if we wanted to find it as a proper measure of affective state.
Is there there's a question that's come through from Tony just asking These animals are found in Europe, but is there anything that inhibits them from surviving in other localities like Africa? Is that was it just a facet of that's where your focus was? So that's the animals you were talking about, or is there something that a geographic factor involved there?
No, I don't think so. So if he means can they survive in dolphinariums in Africa? Yeah, they can. They're also in the wild in Africa. Yeah, we just did it in Europe because that was, again, I was able to sort of travel between those facilities. But I think as far as I've seen in other places, quite a lot of other places are starting to use similar scores of motivation, or at least participation on their own, probably not to do with my paper or anything, but so yeah, maybe if there's a dolphinarium in Africa, so maybe they're using it too, I don't know.
We've just got a couple of minutes left before we go to the next talk, and I just wanted to ask you, I guess, was there anything, this is from me, not from anyone else, was there anything within this study that kind of was unexpected or surprised you or caused unexpected hiccups? Because I think it's really important, particularly for some of our earlier career researchers, to hear about some of those experiences and that it doesn't always go as smoothly as we think it might.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a lot, of course. I mean, I think a multi-facility study is always difficult, and for those of you who've worked in zoos, it's with a fully functioning, zoo open to the public or a marine park, it's the research has to fit in with the daily operations, otherwise it won't get done. The trainers were all amazing at actually doing the thing. I think it took a while to get started, to get all the parks to kind of agree on a methodology and agree to a start date and all of that, and a bit of politics of who would pay for the transport between, things. But once all that was ironed out, everyone was awesome. Yeah, they really were able to take the data, enter it, and send it to me, which is I couldn't have done it without that. So yeah, I think focus on getting the people on side, and then it will hopefully run smoothly.
Yeah, fantastic. All right, well, thank you so much, Izzy, for your time, and I hope you enjoy your evening now up in Sydney.
Thank you. You too.
We'll get ready for our next talk. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, well, I was joking earlier saying that it wouldn't be UFAW unless we had Dan O'Neill with us, barraging us with data and tables and graphs, and I'm so pleased that I get to introduce Dan's talk today. Show me the brachy data. Are flat-faced dogs really unhealthier than other dogs? Remember that we will be taking questions all through this session. You can put your questions into the question bar. Dan will be joining us live after this pre-recording so that he can respond to your questions. And this is a topic very close to my heart and one I'm very interested in seeing. So without further ado, let's start this presentation.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. Thank you very much to UFAW for giving me this opportunity to speak. I'm Dan O'Neill. I'm an epidemiologist at the Royal Veterinary College, and I co-lead the Vet Compass program. Today, we're going to cover some heresy on epidemiology, given that I'm an epidemiologist, and we're going to talk about data, collecting data on brachycephalic dogs, but then moving on from the data. The heresy is we're not focusing on the data, we're focusing on the questions it can answer. So are flat-faced dogs really unhealthier than other dogs? So this is all about deep reflection. It's really important to remember that decisions about owning, buying, keeping flat-faced dogs aren't really dog-related decisions, they're human. This is the conclusion of the brachycephalic working group that has worked on these issues for the past 5 years and is trying to help resolve the welfare crisis in brachycephaly in the UK. And this conclusion really is that the brachycephalic issue is a human social issue. Why is that important? Well, it's important because humans think with two heads, an emotional head and a rational head. The emotional head is all about knee-jerk decisions, one-off decisions that are quick and fun and gratifying and exciting and impulsive. It's all about being human, what gives us a life, about feelings. They're easy decisions to make. Therefore, we make them very often. But actually, the really important decisions are rational, they're slow, considered, might be seen to be boring, frustrating. They make us like machines who collect data. Everything is complex. You have to do some work. It's all about effort. Humans don't like making these, but this is what we need for important decisions, such as buying a flat-faced dog. When we buy one, our emotional head might say that these dogs are just like babies, they're unique, they make us feel socially special, they're so sad, they're so cute, they're pugly, I want one. But actually, they're sentient beings, and maybe society doesn't think that much of us for owning them. There's lots of welfare and health issues, they cost a lot to buy, they cost a lot to keep, there's ethical issues around them, and maybe we should be asking ourselves, should I own one, rather than the impulsive decision. And why does this matter so much for dogs? Well, it's because emotion-based decision-making is very different to evidence-based decision-making. Emotion-based decision-making is fine if I want to buy a pair of socks that's an odd color. It's just a pair of socks. It doesn't have feelings. But when it comes to living sentient beings, we should be basing our decisions on a rational approach that is heavily predicated on data. So that's the message here. It's about show me the data and then ask the question. The brachycephalic working group says to everyone, stop and think before buying a flat-faced dog. In the Queen's speech this year, a new plan for the UK was outlined, our action plan for animal welfare. This aims to put welfare at the heart of government, and it recognises animals as sentient. This is really important, and it's the first time the UK government has publicly said this. Sentience is the capacity to have feelings, including pain and pleasure, and implies a level of conscious awareness. And it's really important that all of us focus on brachycephalic dogs as sentient beings, not as commodities to be bought and sold, but animals with feelings and awareness. However, if we're going to make these rational decisions, we need evidence. Where is that evidence going to come from? To answer this, I present the Vet Compass concept. This is where vet practices in the UK record data on computer systems. Vet Compass collects these data in real time every day, merges them into a single database, exposes them to lots of different researchers, answering different questions and feeding back information to the veterinary profession to improve animal welfare. But what Vet Compass does that's also novel is that it feeds this information out to a wide range of other stakeholders, including charities, kennel clubs, the government, and most importantly, owners. Owners are the ones who choose which breeds to buy, after all, and how to care for them. So they're a key stakeholder that have often been ignored previously. How big is Vet Compass? Well, currently in the UK, it covers 30% of all vet clinics. These data cover then 20 million animals, 61 million measurements, such as body weight, 200 million clinical notes, and 500 million treatments. So Vet Compass truly is big data. These data have been used to date to support over 90 peer-reviewed publications. So what's the evidence then? Well, in one way, we can look at the evidence by looking at specific disorders. So respiratory disorder, corneal ulceration, dystocia, patellar luxation, slipping kneecap, heat-related illness, overweight, anal sac impaction, keratoconjunctivitis sicca, skin fold dermatitis, cherry eye. All of these have been shown in Vet Compass papers. I put the references here and I show them at the end. They've been shown to be hugely predisposed in brachycephalic dogs overall, or in specific brachycephalic breeds. But each one of these studies is just like a grain of sand on a beach. It's one specific focal point, but maybe there's a bigger story. Maybe there are lots of disorders that brachycephalic dogs are healthier for. So rather than focusing on each specific grain of sand, we need to try and look at the beach. And we need to understand it changes all the time, you know, as the tides come in and out, and that it's heavily walked upon by humans, because humans affect what diseases these dogs get, such as overweight in pugs. So if we're to look at the bigger picture, that would be looking at all disorders in brachycephalic and non-brachycephalic dogs. And that's the paper I'd like to produce to you now. This study was published in 2020 in Scientific Reports. It's open access, free for anyone to read. And I'm going to show you some results relating to demography, what these breeds look like, and their health. The methods are all about making mistakes. I've made a lot of mistakes, so it probably means I have a lot of experience. For this study, we included 22,000 dogs from an underlying population of almost 1 million, a random sample. We relied upon first opinion vet diagnoses, so this is a very reliable way of collecting data. And on every dog in the study, we extracted lots of demographic information and all disorders recorded in 2016. The analysis was multivariable. This is key, you will see later, where every disorder was compared between flat-faced and non-flat-faced dogs, but taking account of age, body weight, sex, neuter, and insurance, because these are confounders and they can greatly change the results. The disorder list that we compared was a combined list of the most common disorders in flat-faced dogs and non-flat-faced dogs. We had 30 disorders in this list. So what did we find? Well, first of all, we showed that brachycephalic dogs are really common in the UK. 18%, almost a fifth of all dogs in the UK are brachycephalic. If there is health issues with these dogs, this shows that it's really important. The median age was 3. Well, does this matter? Well, it's a stat. As I said earlier, it's not about the piece of information itself, it's what we use it for. So if we compare that against mesocephalic, the dogs with a middle-length skull, or dolichocephalic, the dogs with long skulls, the brachy dogs are much younger. So we can use this to show that these dogs are rising in popularity. So there are lots of puppies entering the population. And this shows that as these dogs age, the brachycephalic crisis will worsen because most disorders increase in prevalence with age. Brachycephalic dogs are also smaller than other types of dogs, significantly smaller, which again feeds into maybe part of the reasons why people like them. Brachycephalic dogs are less likely to be neutered, maybe because of perceptions about anesthetic risk or the desire to breed from them. And they're less likely to be insured, maybe again because this costs a lot and brachycephalic premiums are loaded. What about the breeds? Can that tell us something? Well, within the brachycephalic group, there were 34 breeds, but actually this is much fewer than in the mesocephalic, where there were 169 breeds, and the dolichocephalic, where there were 66 breeds. So this suggests that our desire for brachycephalics is concentrated within a small group of breeds. And even more than that, within the top 15 breeds in the brachycephalics, 98% of the dogs were covered by these top 15, whereas within the top 15 in the other two groups, it was just around 80%. So again, this tells us we have certain breeds that are brachycephalic that we as humans really like. And what are these breeds? Well, we always think of pugs, French bulldogs and bulldogs, but actually it's much different than that. And this is the beauty of epidemiology. It shows us a different view. And it's Chihuahuas, Shih Tzus and Cavaliers that are actually the most common flat-faced dogs that are out there at the moment. These ones in bold, because they're increasing in popularity, probably will rise up this list over the next few years. But this is really useful information. So health, well, if we were to summarize health into one parameter, we might say dogs that had at least one disorder during the year of interest. And at a univariable level, 65% overall had at least one disorder. Within the brachy dogs, that was 66%, and really it was no different to the other types of dogs. But remember, I said this is univariable. If we were to do a multivariable model, taking into account age and body weight and all the other parameters I said, we see a much different story. Brachycephalic dogs had 27% more chance, more likelihood of having at least one disorder compared with mesocephalic or dosocephalic. We were using crossbred here as the comparator. Meso and dolicho were not different crossbreds. So this shows that much of the older literature that was using univariable analysis should be treated with caution. And again, it shows even when we get an epidemiological result, we need to use our rational head to think whether it's well analysed and whether it's telling us safe information. But what of the specific disorders? Well, there were 30 of these. I've grouped them into 2 slides because there was too many to fit into each slide. So let's look at the top 15. The top one is corneal ulceration. Brachy dogs were 8.4 times more likely to have this hugely painful condition that is very strongly associated with conformation, the facial conformation, causing these eyes to bulge and the eyelids not to completely cover the cornea. Heart murmurs, umbilical hernias, pododermatitis, skin cysts, slipping kneecap, otitis externa, and anal sac impaction were also more common. So in summary, 8 of the top 13 disorders were more common in brachycephalics. But maybe there's also lots of disorders that are less common. Well, is that so? Sadly not. There were only 2 of the 30 disorders that were less common: undesirable behavior and claw injury. And this undesirable behavior, which was only half as likely in brachycephalic dogs, maybe is one of the clues as to why people really like these dogs. We have a perception that their behavior is desirable. So what are the conclusions here? Well, the conclusions are the best answers are more good questions. Stop and think. Don't just listen and absorb a piece of datum. Challenge it, think about it, use it to develop new understanding. Brachycephalic dogs are different to other dogs. They're smaller for a start. They are basically different, and we need to understand that difference. But there is also very strong evidence of poorer overall health in brachycephalic dogs. So this supports the brachycephalic working group mantra to stop and think before buying these dogs. I've shown you the power of big data, and there are lots of other studies coming that will use this data source. We need to remember the brachycephalic issue is a human issue, and we need to encourage people to move to a rational decision-making for sentient beings. The brachycephalic working group mantra is that maximizing health, welfare, and temperament overrides all other considerations for dogs. We need to think about what it is the dog is feeling, not what we as humans are feeling. In other words, the emotional thing we need to forget about and think rationally about the dog. And we need to remember that owning these dogs and breeding these dogs is based upon a social license to operate. And I think this is going to become a huge factor over the coming years in our ongoing decisions about which dogs we own and breed and keep. So in conclusion, I would remind you to tell everyone, spread the word, shout it from the rooftops, stop and think before buying a flat-faced dog. I've put some references here for anyone who's interested, and I would like to finish by thanking the other members of the Vet Compass team for contributing to this wonderful work. These are our Twitter handles, and I would especially like to thank UFAW for allowing me this opportunity to talk, and also for being such a wonderful supporter of Vet Compass. Thank you for your attention. Goodbye.
Thank you, Dan. If I can just invite you to turn on your camera and audio and join me. Just while we wait for some questions to come through, would you like to just mention your book that's about to come out?
Yep, Mia, is this coming through? The volume is working?
It is. I think if you can mute me, that would be helpful.
Ah.
Because you're just,
okay.
There's a bit of an echo.
Right, let's just see how we get on. I'm not sure how to mute you. And I think you're too special to be muted anyway, Mia. So let's see how we get on. Yes, basically within the brachycephalic world, we're trying to bring together information from a whole series of different experts. So along with the wonderful Rowena Packer from Royal Veterinary College, we've put together a book, Health and Welfare of Brachycephalic Animals, that comes out next month in July. We have got 20 experts, 20 chapters written by experts from all over the world, covering some of the human behavioral aspects as well as the clinical aspects of brachycephalic health. So I'm hoping that will contribute to the overall understanding of brachycephalic issues.
And who particularly would you like to see read that book, Dan? Who's it intended for?
That's a really good question, because when we started the book, you always end up having to try and pick a target audience for it. And really what we try to do is cheat and have it applicable to as wide a range as possible. The target audience we're hoping will be the breeding aficionados, so because they're the ones that will make decisions, the academics, because they're the ones that are teaching, but really our key audience ultimately is owners. Owners make decisions about which dogs, whether to have a dog, and dogs bring wonderful advantages to people's lives, but then we need to decide what advantages come to the dogs' lives. So we're hoping that its owners will also pick up this book and read it.
I've got a ton of questions coming through now, so thank you for telling us about the book. First of all, Stephen Wickens has asked that most of the images that get used of brackies tend to be the younger types, you know, the pretty ones. We almost never see images of the older, less healthy, or not healthy, but ill, you know, more visibly unwell dogs. Do you think that that would make a difference in people's perception of these dogs?
I think a lot of the pictures that are shown because of the human joy that comes from owning a dog and showing off a dog. So there's no real reason for people in social media and influencers to show the sad side of these dogs. Basically, a lot of people are showing the pictures to reflect back positively on themselves. So I think there's always a drive to show dogs that look cute and adorable. They're often used to sell concepts as well and sell products. So again, the dogs are being used to sell a wider message a lot of the time in the public forums. I think a lot of this is a little bit like social media in general. When you read even humans' profiles on Facebook or Instagram, everyone is happy, everyone is joyful. The reality of humans' lives is far from it. We all have a drudge within our daily lives, but we show off our happy side. So I think you're right. A lot of the imagery is positive. It's trying to be smiley, happy, selling the story, but ultimately there's always a different side. And Stephen is right. Perhaps we should show that different side. I think ultimately a lot of people don't want to hear about it. People just want to hear happy stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting the data on insurance for these brachy breeds. Do you think that having higher premiums for brackies is a good thing in terms of being a deterrent to ownership, or is it bad because it's just going to reduce the likelihood of disorders getting treated?
Do you know, there's a great question behind that question. Do you remember I said think about data and then ask a question? I'm not sure in the brachy world whether anything is good or bad per se. The brachy world is all about complexity in humans and how we think and how we mitigate different actions. Overall, within VetCompass, virtually across all the papers that we've studied, dogs that are insured get better health care than dogs that aren't. And normally insured dogs have 2, 3, maybe 4 times the level of diagnosis. So ultimately, it would be much better for the dogs where there are higher levels of insurance. However, the costs of treating these dogs mean that the premia just have to be so much higher. And that does lead to lots of these dogs not being insured. I regularly get messages and stories from people who say, well, I can't afford insurance. Look how much I paid for the dog. I paid £3,500 to £4,000 for a dog, and you want me to insure it as well. So it is complex. In an ideal world, every dog would be insured. And from the dog's perspective, insurance is good.
Excuse me, so I'm recovering from a cold, and I was hoping like anything that wasn't going to start making me cough this evening, but here we go. Everyone gets to watch me look slightly strangled while I ask questions and suppress the cough at the same time. Even with this is a question that's come through from Elizabeth Carter. Even with there being a more widespread understanding the brachycephalic dogs have poorer health, they're still really popular. Do you have any ideas on how to target the people who are more likely to buy them?
Yeah, it's one of the things within the UK Brachycephalic Working Group. We put lots and lots of effort into this. And essentially, we've come around to the two heads. There's the emotional head and the rational head, and that it's really working on the emotional head. It's human behavior change, nudge psychology that really works. What does not seem to work is telling people that they're making a bad decision. That just doesn't seem to work. It's probably facing the reality and agreeing with people that these dogs behaviorally often are lovely. And it is fine to look at one of these dogs and smile internally. But what we should do is try to become the dog and think about the life that those dogs live and compare it to the life of a different type of dog that doesn't perhaps have such a high predisposition to corneal ulceration, or that can go out and run around in warm weather without huge risk of heat stroke, and that can sleep comfortably without issues of struggling to breathe, and that can go through life without the challenges of breathing problems and skin fold dermatitis. So really the key, I think, is not telling people what to do, but it's trying to help people to reach a better decision themselves. And that's why it does come back to this stop and think before buying a flat-faced dog. It's a new way of thinking for most owners. Most owners think about what the dog can give me rather than necessarily what I can give the dog or what life gives the dog, which is probably the ultimately important question.
Building on that, there's a question from Rachel Moxon asking, or first saying thanks for a great presentation, but how do we work to change the culture among breeders and pet dog owners so that the health of these breeds can be positively impacted? Demand for the breeds is so high, Rachel says she worries that the general public may be difficult to persuade.
Yeah, Rachel, great question as well. It comes back to the complexity behind all of this. And even when we talk about working with breeders, that's kind of where we're grouping all breeders into one group, and all breeders aren't in one group. There are breeders, so within the brachycephalic working group, we work with the breed kennel clubs and the breed clubs, the Pug and the French Bulldog and the Bulldog breed clubs. Those breeders are wonderful. Their aim is to try and improve the welfare of those dogs. They love those dogs, but then obviously the market is being supplied by lots of breeders who are just breeding for volume, breeding as many dogs as possible with maybe less regard to their health. So I think it's way more complex than that. The key is collaboration. The key is not us and them. So the key is to work with all the stakeholders, including the breeders, the veterinary profession, the charities, government, politics, and anyone who can reach out socially to humans. So the key is to work as a group with a shared goal. And that's why within the brachycephalic working group, we have emphasized the shared goal is maximizing the good health, welfare, and temperament of these dogs, and that overrides all other concerns. So we just have that at the hub of every conversation.
I think this really builds on what we're learning about ideal science communication as well, Dan, that this deficit model that we've traditionally used, where scientists sort of share what we know with other people, and just in the way that we're used to communicating with each other, where we, lecture or share news, isn't the best way to affect change in general society. So I know some people are concerned that perhaps this think twice isn't strong enough language, because we really want people to do more than think twice. But in terms of affecting that conversation and that dialogue and sharing it, it's probably, I guess there's been a lot of background checking to show that this is a way to move forward in that human behaviour change side of things. Is that fair?
Absolutely, absolutely. The whole, and you're right, there's lots of people that would say we should just have a message, stop, don't buy these dogs, right? Those sort of messages have been used for various different topics, not just brachycephalic dog topics, human behavioral topics as well, for the last decades. Essentially, they don't work. Telling people what you think is fine. They now know what you think. You haven't changed what they think. To get people to change what they think, you need to actually encourage them to think and weigh up the pros and cons and move their perspective and look at the problem from a different perspective. So often I think when we shout what we believe and tell other people what to do, it's actually a goal of making ourselves feel better and superior. It hasn't necessarily changed the world.
It tends to make them double down on their own beliefs, I think, is what the evidence suggests.
Correct. The world exists within everybody's head. We all carry our own vision of the world. So the key is to change the vision of the world that as many people as possible carry, change it towards maybe a more welfare-based world from the dog's perspective. Telling people what to do just doesn't work.
Well, I could talk to you about flat-faced dogs for a week, I think, and not get tired of it. But unfortunately, we've got all these other amazing animals like the dogs and the red pandas and the ticks and the pigs to get to. So thank you so much, Dan. If anyone has any more pressing questions, Dan is on Twitter, so you can reach out to him there and ask your questions. And other than that, we're going to move into now to our 6 short talks that will be presented back to back, and then all the speakers will be joining us live for the question panel at the end. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you very much, Mia. Thank you, UFAW.
Sabir Hussain is here, PhD student in the City University of Hong Kong. Today, I'm going to present my topic entitled as Tick Control in the Bovine Population of Pakistan, a Step Towards Animal Welfare. As you know, ectoparasites are ubiquitous, often causing severe threat to livestock, pet, and wildlife animals, and are most challenging to be eradicated permanently. Hence, they are usually managed at a local level with the continuous use of insecticides or insecticides. Ectoparasites cause not only economic losses globally, but also create animal health and welfare concerns, morbidity and mortality due to their potential blood-sucking nature. For this purpose, our major study include to assess the losses due to ectoparasite, how blood-sucking arthropods are concerns towards animal welfare, modern techniques adopted for the reduction of parasitic burdens to uplift animal welfare. For this purpose, 3 databases were used to search for the studies published from 1947 to Feb 2021. We include those studies containing tick species identification through morphological or molecular method. We reviewed almost 60 studies regarding tick infestation. Tick-infested animal faces decrease in their body condition scoring, damages to skin, hides, loss of blood and blood protein, debilitation, depression of immune function to pose threat towards not animal health but also their welfare. As the dairy sector of Pakistan is developing through imported breeds of Holstein Friesian cow, tick burden is a great animal health and farm economic concern. More than 80% of the tick population are exposed to tick and are responsible for the transmission of various tick-borne diseases in Pakistan. Tick infestation also disturbs the animal resilience through stress, irritation, reduction in grazing and rumination time, and even death in severe cases. These major problems for the bovine population not only affect the animal health, survival and well-being, but also raises animal welfare concerns due to treatment failures. So our study emphasized the importance of prevention rather than cure through proper biosecurity measures. To make the local farmers aware about animal welfare issues linked with blood-sucking arthropods. Promote the use of resilient livestock breeds and a fuller understanding of fact of better nutrition to bring a positive contribution towards an integrated animal welfare. Thank you so much.
Hello everybody, my name is Dr. Edward Narayan and I am a senior lecturer in animal science at the School of Agriculture and Food Sciences in the University of Queensland here in Australia. Today I will be discussing some of the results from our research on tracking stress remotely via wool cortisol and smart tags in merino sheep. I hope you find this interesting, and if you have any questions you can email me on my email address. So reproduction basically involves the interconnection between the mother and the fetus. It can have an influence from the nutrition, maternal stress, body condition, which will eventually affect the survival and the product quality. So animal welfare is a very important part of animal production. In this trial, we wanted to see whether shearing as a management intervention influenced the behavior and the productivity of merino sheep here in Australia. So we had 2 groups of sheep. One group was shown early in pregnancy, and the other group was actually left unshown. And then we monitored the physiology and the behavior of the mothers and the wool quality of the lambs. So let's look at some of the results. Early shearing and stress. We basically found that during pre-joining, the stress levels were similar, as well as in mid-pregnancy, but in late gestation, the stress levels were much lower in the ewes that were actually early shorn. So the wool was removed from this sheep, and we measured cortisol from the wool itself. We also found that shearing actually improved the body condition of the sheep, so they were grazing more. As you can see here, the numbers are much higher compared to the ones shorn sheep. Interestingly, the lambs had a vast improvement in wool quality. So you can see over here, the wool micron was lower in the early shorn ewes compared to the ones shorn ewes, but the comfort factor, which is a very strong indicator of wool quality, was also improved in the lambs of ewes or the mothers that were shorn early in pregnancy. We also tracked the behavior of the mothers using smart collar tags, and you can see here there was much higher grazing in the twice shorn ewes compared to the once shorn ewes over here. So in hindsight, the research combines cutting-edge physiological and behavioral monitoring technology to determine how the mother fares under natural environmental conditions, and shearing actually in this case helps to improve the product quality, which is the wool of the lambs, as well as the body condition of the mothers as well. So with that, I hope you find our work interesting, and I look forward to some questions, and I look forward to interacting with you. Thank you very much.
Hello and welcome to the talk. I'm Amir Khan from India, and I'll be talking about captured pandas. Red pandas are small mammals found in Nepal, Bhutan, India, and Myanmar. They're bamboo specialists, but they can eat insects, flowers, fruits, eggs occasionally. They're endangered and population is declining in the wild, hence they need captive support through captive breeding management. In India, we housed Aeolus fulgens, and there's another species called Aeolus fulgens steani elsewhere in the world. Captive breeding program in India has been started since 1993, but they're not doing fine. Why they're not doing fine, it's not known. They're inconsistent breeder. Hence, we're asking a very basic question: how captive pandas are doing? We want to know what is their stereotypic extent and behavioral diversity, and what drivers affect them. Stereotypic behavior is repetitive behavior and due to pure welfare, which also indicate stress in animal. Behavioral diversity basically are different number of behaviors. We use focal sampling to evaluate behaviors, behavioral diversity index given by Shane and Weaver to find out different behaviors, and different statistical software. So we sketch ethogram before study. Some are like grooming, questing, alert, moving, feeding. Three different behavior known to be stereotypy in red panda are pacing, tongue flicking, position circling. We collected 26 individuals data in 972 hours from 3 different zoos in India. So what we found? So we found red panda does show stereotypy of 2% per hour and behavior diversity index of 1 per hour. They mostly sleep, that is 57%, that is their favorite behavior among all. Stereotypic behavior changes with quantum of bamboo and tree density. So we can say plenty of bamboo means less stress, and more tree also means less stress. Stereotypy also changes with visitor numbers and nest numbers. So we can say here low visitors and more nests contribute to less stress. Behavior diversity changes with visitor number. So high visitors, low behavior diversity, and vice versa. But with nest number, the results are confusing. Where high nests are there, behavior diversity is less, and vice versa. This is because they are basically nocturnal animal, and in daytime, if they find a nice place, they can sleep all over day. So hence, nest is the best place to sleep. So as the results indicates. In conclusion, we can say more tree and logs, more bamboo and frequent number of bamboo, and more nests and visitor numbers can contribute good welfare in red panda so they can breed properly. Here, through behavior assessment, we can say that we have found optimal environment in terms of bamboo, nests, tree, logs, and visitors, which can reduce stress and give better health to red pandas so they can reproduce and participate in reproduction program. This part of sketch or art has been done by me, and there's a message to you all. Every species needs a conservationist. Thank you very much.
Hi everyone, my name is Mona Gersbeck and this pitch is about a small study on the effects of hatching system on broiler activity measured individually by an ultra-wideband tracking system. We know that conventional hatching in the hatchery can affect broiler health, resilience and welfare. Therefore, alternative concepts have been developed, such as providing chickens with early nutrition in the hatchery or hatching eggs on farm. However, information on the resilience and welfare of chickens hatched in these systems is limited. Changes in broiler activity are a promising indicator for various resilience and welfare threats. For instance, lower activity levels have been associated with sickness and lameness. By the help of modern sensor technology, it is possible to record activity patterns automatically. The aim of this study was to assess the effects of hatching system on broiler activity in general and after the challenging situation of vaccination. Therefore, a proof of principle experiment was performed with chickens that hatched either conventionally in the hatchery, in a system which provided feed and water in the hatcher, or on farm. They were reared in 3 floor pens in a room in which an ultra-wideband tracking system was installed. The birds were tracked with active tags from day 50 to day 34 for 4 hours during the light phase. At day 28, all chickens were vaccinated against infectious bronchitis. The target variable was distance moved per hour. During the 3rd week of life, hatchery-hatched chickens moved less than hatchery-fed and on-farm hatched chickens, whereas there was no difference among all 3 groups in week 4 and 5. To analyze the effects of vaccination, the mean distances moved were summarized for 3 days before and 3 days after the challenge. There was no difference among the groups before the challenge. However, thereafter, hatchery-hatched chickens showed higher levels of activity, whereas chickens from the 2 alternative systems showed a decline in activity. Further research is needed to understand what this means for broiler resilience and welfare precisely. Thank you for your attention. If you are interested in more details on this study, please visit our virtual poster here at the UFAW conference. For more on performance and welfare of chickens from the 3 hatching systems, you should have a look at our recently published papers.
Hi everyone, today I'd like to talk to you about part of my PhD research. As part of the Pillow project, we have developed 2 smartphone apps, Piglo for pigs and Ibane for poultry, for animal welfare self-assessments in organic and outdoor production systems. So the main purpose of the apps is to allow farmers to conduct welfare self-assessments of their own pigs or chickens. The farmers answer questions about welfare indicators in the app while observing the animals. And we've chosen to mainly include questions about animal-based indicators of welfare rather than, for example, resource-based indicators. And the main goal is to get the farmers to observe their animals in a way that's different from what they're used to, which will hopefully help create awareness of possible welfare problems. And the results of the app and the welfare assessment can be discussed with a veterinarian or other advisor who, if necessary, can help the farmer come up with a plan that is specific for their farm to improve animal welfare. For the results of the apps, all indicators are divided into categories. So here we see an example of the category appropriate behavior from the Piglo app. In the first column, we see the names of the welfare indicators that were assessed. In the second column, we have the answers or scores, which are usually just average percentages of the animals or groups of animals that were positive for a certain indicator. In the third column, we have an interesting feature of the app, which is benchmarking based on percentile. This column gives you information about how well you did compared to other users of the app. So the higher your percentile and the greener the color, the better you did compared to others. In case you have a low score for a certain indicator or you just want more information about it, you can click the icon behind the name and a new window will open that gives information about what the indicator means, why it's important for welfare, and risk factors for possible welfare problems. And these risk factors can also help you find a solution in case you have a welfare problem. Another feature of the app is a graph that shows the evolution of welfare on your own farm. For this graph, we have chosen a selection of indicators that we think are most important. And if you complete multiple welfare assessments, you can see if you've made any progress on these aspects of welfare. Both the Piglo and Ibana apps can be downloaded for free on your smartphone. Currently, they're available in English, Dutch, and French, but we will be adding more languages soon. If you want any more information about the apps or the Pillow project, you can visit the websites listed on this slide or feel free to contact me. Thank you for your attention.
Whew, what a ride. I really do like these short, quick presentations. They're great. What a way to get a snapshot into a whole lot of talks in a short time frame. So if I can invite all those presenters to join me by switching on your cameras and your audio. Fantastic. And what we'll do is I'll ask each of you a couple of questions in the order that you presented. So just to give the audience time to have a think and add any other questions they'd like. So Sabir, we'll start with you if that's okay. One question that's come through from Birte Nielsen is, would the use of more efficient drugs pose a risk for resistance developing in the ticks? Hang on, Sabir, we can't hear you. Can you unmute?
Yes, now can you hear me?
Absolutely, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. When I will talk about the scenario of Pakistan, the first scenario, the acaricide, most of the people are continuously using the same acaricide. So most of the ticks are going to resistant against ticks. So one furthermore reason is that people are using the same acaricide and they often used after 1 year or after 1.5 years. So that's why due to using of the same acaricide and low capital investment, they are not following the exact protocol as recommended by the vets. So due to these, ticks are going to resistant. So we need to change the control measures against ticks. Like we need to control the tick farm. We need to control the microbiota inside the living creatures inside the ticks. In this way, we will be able to control the population of the ticks and resistant as well.
There's another question for you that's come through from Elizabeth Carter, saying presumably Holstein Friesians are important because of their high milk yield, but the indigenous breeds are more resilient. So is there an increasing trend of importing higher yielding breeds? Are dairy farmers receptive to the inherent problems of imported breeds?
Yeah, thank you very much. As you know, as our native breeds, they tilt their skin continuously. So due to this, they are quite resistant to ticks. So whenever we, the one major reason they having a low milk yield. So the people are continuously curious to import the Holstein Friesian breed, but they are, they are not adapted to our environment. So that's why they are quite susceptible to tick infestation. So how the people are doing nowadays, they are trying to cross the breeds with our native breeds with the Holstein Friesian breed. So in this way, these cross breeds are quite stable to our environment. So we need to we need to maintain this. Along with this, we need to follow the recommended protocol by the vets. In this way, we can reduce the tick control population.
Thank you. Now, Edward isn't with us at the moment. Perhaps he'll jump on in and join us, but we'll skip across to Arma. And there's a question from Hugh Gollage asking in regards to the red pandas, is there a way to mitigate the effect of visitors on the pandas?
Well, yeah, the basic thing is that you have to control the visitors' numbers at a time. So like when I was observing them near enclosure, so I could see the maximum like 300 to 400, in an hour, obviously hourly basis I'm talking about. The visitor used to visit because it's a unique spaces, not many zoos are housing, and it's very unique. So people really want to spend some time over there. And apart from that, they do shout and everything. So I think the numbers, in proper management system would work very fine to just to control the numbers. I would say in batches they would send to enclosure, something like that. Yeah.
Leading on from that, there's a question from Steve Weddle asking, are there any studies into the effectiveness of reintroduction programs with the red pandas?
Come again, I'm sorry.
Have there been any studies done looking at the effectiveness of reintroducing the red pandas into their natural habitat?
There is like in 2002 and 3 part of Government of India plan, there was introduction of two individuals, and post introduction they have followed, and there's a little bit study, but not in detail. How they are doing and what factors would affect their survival in the field. But currently, there's again a 5-year plan, 5-year plan where they're introducing another batch of pandas, and they have like this time they are equipped with technology, collars, and also have to look into detail. So yes, there is a one attempt, but that partially I would say was successful, and we are still trying, to try our best.
Thank you. We'll move now over to Mona. There's a question from Helen Gray asking about the cool technology that you used for tracking. Is there a limit to how many individuals can be tracked in this way at any one time?
I do not know exactly if there's a exact limit, but it's it may be several hundred or something. So that's not the problem. The biggest problem is actually that these sensors are very expensive. So yeah, and yes, you cannot not buy a lot of them at one at a time. And then the second thing is they are collecting data, coordinate data. So in a three-dimensional system, sorry. So you have 3 data points every second for each chicken that you track. So you can imagine if you track 15 chickens for hours, how many data points you have. So and if you do this with 30 chickens, you have the double amount and so on. So that's more the limiting factor. So also with the software that is behind these things, so that is more the computing capacity.
That sounds like a lot of data.
If this answers the question. So yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great. Evelyn, is there a question that's come through from Lisa? I am unsure of the pronunciation. I apologize, Liza. In regards to the welfare apps, are there any measures related to positive or negative social interactions with conspecifics involved there?
No, not really. I mean, we have some things related to negative interactions, but even those are not, we don't record live behavior of interactions. In that case, we record things like scratches or other lesions that are often associated with aggression. But for positive behavior, it's difficult to score things that, you could only score it live. There isn't something like scratches that stays behind that shows that there were interactions. So no, for positive behavior, we have we score if they are using enrichment at the time, and we also score the interaction with humans at the time. So we ask farmers to enter the pen and see how the animals react to them, but not positive interactions between conspecifics. No.
And excitingly, Nina from Zurich is already trying to download your apps and has just asked, said that they can find the Piglo app on the App Store, but not the EBE and E. Is that not yet available for iOS, or should it be there?
It definitely should be, yeah. So
Is there
I'm
a
not
website
sure.
where
Maybe.
they can go and find the link to that?
Well, yes, the link in my presentation is the website of so UFAW, that's the organization that developed the app. So if you go to their website,
perfect. It's a good reminder for people to access the handouts through the right-hand side of the webinar, because I'm sure they'll be able to find the details there. Now, Edward has joined us, so I want to quickly jump back to some of the questions up there. Edward, what do you think is the reason for the increase in grazing behaviour in the twice shorn sheep? Thank you for making me say that.
Hi, Mia. So basically what happened was the pregnant ewes that were shown early in gestation, their grazing behavior, obviously you want to increase the nutritional plane while the fetus is developing. So with a less wool burden, we were able to see more movement in that particular group of sheep, which was very interesting that the smart tags were able to detect it.
That was a question from Helen Gray. Sorry, I should have mentioned the name. There's one also from Claire Richardson, which is asking, is it valuable, financially valuable for farmers to shear for merino wool? So obviously just giving a little bit of global context for people who may be coming from other parts of the world and not familiar with the merino wool industry here. And just wondering if there would be financial as well as animal welfare benefits to shearing early.
That's a very good question. Thanks for asking that. Yeah, so here in Australia, merino wool is highly sought after because of the highly high quality fiber of the wool. So it's very much sought for the fashion industry. So shearing, you have to be careful, make sure that you know what the climate is like, the microclimate and the weather. Make sure that the animals don't go through any climatic stress. But from a dollar value, there's research still ongoing, but per head we could see there was at least $5 in the farmer's pocket if you played well with the shearing and the nutrition. So it's a game, but if you are careful and look after the animal's well-being, it can be profitable.
And just finally, Edward, is shearing stressful for sheep?
That's a very good question. So in this, we were tracking hormones in the wool, like we had yesterday, the hair cortisol in cattle and pigs. So that's more of a long-term assessment of the physiology of the animal. Acute stress is generated when the animal is shown, but it's not showing any downstream effects on the animal's fitness. So they show, behavioral response, thermal response, but there is no effect on the health. So shearing, if it is done within the standard practices, Australia has very high animal welfare standards. So if you do that within the standard animal husbandry practices, it should not cause any stress. But just be careful that you be aware of the animal's behavior while shearing is done.
Well, with that, we have reached the end of this first session of day 2. I would like to thank you all again for your fantastic short presentations. You fit in a magnificent amount of detail in the few minutes available to you, so well done. And I'd like to thank everyone who's been watching all around the world. We'll be back in around about 40 minutes for the second session of today, where I will leave you in the very capable hands of Rebecca Norquist. And we will continue sharing the fantastic animal welfare science. Thanks again, everyone. We'll see you at the next session.
Thank you.
Thanks.